The Musician by Sludgieboy. Name? Cough. My mind had been wandering again. The man looked at me patiently. Name, he repeated again. Edwin, I replied. Edwin Stroud. The man pursed his lips slightly as he checked the papers in front of him. Occupation, he asked. Musician, I replied. His eyes looked up from the paper. Sorry, he said. Musician, I repeated, smiling innocently. Musician, the man replied. Patronizing? Maybe just a bit. I was finding it a bit difficult to concentrate. Well, Mr. Stroud, why don't you tell me about your music? The man was definitely patronizing me now. I wasn't sure why. I wasn't even sure who he was. I struggled to focus my thoughts back as far as I could. It's kind of strange. When I was a child, I suffered with extreme melophobia. You know what that is? The man nodded. He looked at me very intently, not looking at me so much as looking into me. Well, all through my childhood, I had this fear. I would freak out if I heard music, any kind of music. You know how difficult that is? How hard it is for your family? TV with the sound off, we use subtitles. No kids' parties or days out. I was homeschooled because I would just go berserk at any tune. I had panic attacks, music sounding like dragging nails down a backboard. It had a physical presence, stifling me, battering me with its rhythm. I guess my home life was pretty stressful. My parents started drinking a lot. I can't blame them. Who would want a child to ruin their life? A child that, by one way or another, you love unconditionally. Yeah, I guess it was tough. Anyways, as I said, my parents used to drink quite a bit, and I'd hear them shouting as I would go to sleep. That became normal. No lullabies, just tension and anger and fear. One night I remembered the usual bedtime routine, trying to give my father a hug, him not being able to look at me, and me hugging his leg, his whole body tense as though it took all of his willpower not to lash out at me. My mother, smelling of raw alcohol, smothered me with a sarcastic cooing and forced affection. I went to bed, and the usual nocturnal arguments began. They soothed me. Then I heard something. I guess it was music. I was half asleep, but the music seemed beautiful. I soon fell asleep, and the music was just a memory. The next day I asked my father about the music he was playing last night. He said that he and my mother had decided to split up because it was a self-destructive situation, that her drinking was way out of hand, that he had put on some music after she'd gone. I would guess it was a kind of parting fuck you. He never played that song again. I figured I was over this phobia, but after never hearing music as long as I can remember, it took a huge amount of willpower to actively seek it out. Do go against everything that my brain was telling me not to do, like skydiving or bungee jumping. I remember I must have been about 12. My dad was out and I turned the TV on. I turned the volume up slowly, tentatively. The saccharine advert jingle shot like electricity down my spine. It sounded discordant, metallic. It was jarring in its velocity. I couldn't move. It wasn't over it. I started to panic. I collapsed on the floor. My father found me about an hour later in the fetal position, rigid with fear and covered in sweat. We got rid of the TV. I blinked. The memories fading fast. I was back in the room. The man was still staring intently at me, the fluorescent lights reflecting his glasses. He pushed them up the bridge of his nose slightly and leaned forward almost imperceptibly. Then what? He said. As he finished his sentence, his mouth curled in the corner as he was somehow humoring me by listening to the story. By the time I was 15, my dad was hardly around. He would be out drinking all the time and doing whatever else he did now that my mom had left. I found I could go out at night. There was less of a chance of idiots with loud car stereos or TV noise. Even people singing used to make me feel weird. So my dad would be out, and so would I. I was pretty much nocturnal. I would sleep in the day and use earplugs in case the local ice cream van came around and set me over the edge with its tiny feedback-like howl. I would casually observe people from the safety of the darkness. Not like a peeping Tom. I'm not a pervert or anything. I'm nothing. No thing. I should say at this point that where we lived was not far from the edge of town, about half an hour's walk away. I used to head out on my own in the dark, doesn't that sound crazy nowadays, and just listen to the night sounds. One night I was out lying on my back, looking at the stars when a car drove past and stopped. It was about a quarter of a mile away, I guess. The man got out and I could hear the music again. It was sublime. I wept. The melodies were incredible. The car drove off, but the singing remained. I walked towards where the car seemed to have been, but the music had stopped. I was alone in the silence again. I decided to carry a tape recorder with me just in case I heard it again. I mean, I could listen to most music, but this was somehow different. It didn't terrify or smother. It comforted, it soared. I had to find it again. So a few months later, I was heading out on my usual nighttime walk when I heard it again. It was somehow different than before, quieter too, but still good. I took out my tape recorder and hit record, hoping it wasn't too low to register in the rubbish built-in mic. I wandered around trying to find out where it was coming from, but it just seemed to hover in the air. I looked around, and my only other witness in this search was an old dog resting under a bush. But before I could trace it, it was gone. Over the next few years, I managed to record some more tunes, but they were so rare and fleeting that I started to treasure each cassette and hid them away from my father in case he smashed them, like he smashed all the records when I was young. This was my music. So you hid the music from your father. Why was that? The man didn't even seem to be blinking now. He was completely emotionless. Yes, I replied. He wouldn't have understood. All these years of not having music in the house and finding my cassettes with beautiful music, it would have been too much for him. He got angry when he was drunk, and he was usually drunk. I don't think that's the reason, said the man. Is it? Those last two words were very deliberate. Is it? Maybe he thought I was lying about my father. Maybe he thought I didn't have these wondrous tapes hidden away. We found your tapes, he said. There were lots of them. I knew I wasn't lying. When did you start making your own music? Again, the sarcastic tone. I didn't understand why he was patronizing me. I smiled. You know, it took a long time to figure it out, but I was having to make do with finding these songs just floating in the air. They didn't happen very often, but I would treasure them when they did. And I found out how to make the music myself. It was not as hard as you think. The tricky part was finding musicians up to the job. Like they say about stories, everyone has a good one in them. Some have more than one. The trick is to get them to make music for as long as possible. That was where I needed to study, to tease these songs out of the chaos of thought, to write longer songs. At first, like any musician, I was clumsy. Hours of work might only produce a few chords, maybe the beginnings of a melody. I did learn, though, and became more productive. The songs started to flow, and I began to fall in love with the music. Because of my condition, I could only work with one musician at a time. I would record what they had to offer, then move on. I would mix the separate recordings together to make whole songs. I had to travel around to find people to work with, and I found talent everywhere. The expression on the man's face seemed to change for the first time. He still looked at me, but now he didn't like what he saw. He was done hearing me now. You know, we also found your recording studio. The statement seemed to hang there unfinished. Was he waiting for me to add something? Really? Impressive, isn't it? I smiled again, hoping to diffuse the tension that was quickly rising in the atmosphere. You were certainly busy, the man replied through gritted teeth. For the record, I am showing Mr. Stroud the photos we took at the recording studio. The man spoke into the tape recorder just like mine. He placed one photo after another on the table in front of me, all taken in that dark and filthy room. In the middle of the room was a sturdy wooden chair, with leather straps hanging from the arms and legs. There was a dark patch on the floor. A microphone hung at the head height in front of the chair. One photo of a small tin contained teeth of various size, one photo of a severed finger, one of a metal table with various tools, one of a tape recorder. And now the musicians, he said. The photos were falling faster on the table now, as though the man didn't want to touch them in case he was somehow tainted by them. Photos of bloodied bodies, people of all ages, brutalized beyond recognition. This poor bastard, as he threw the last photo down, the poor soul lasted for 3 days after we found him. He died the day we got to you. Ah, yes, he was very resilient, I replied. I had a week's worth of music from him. I smiled again. The man looked at me, and I could see his jaw tense. Take him away, he said. 2 large men walked in through the door and hoisted me to my feet. It's such wonderful music, I said. Beautiful, beautiful music. I was dragged down the corridor back to my room. I fell asleep to the sound of music drifting down the corridors. That was The Musician by Sludgieboy. If you like this video, leave a like. If you're new, please consider subscribing. And have a slightly more creepy day.